Welcome to the Soul Grit podcast. I'm Ann Taylor McNeese, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I also love Jesus, and I'm passionate about all things gospel and therapy. I created Soul Grit to be at the intersection of mental health and Christian faith. Christ followers need a place to ask questions and get answers about mental health. Join me as we dive into real stories and real questions from people who want to honor God with their hearts, souls, and minds. Hi, welcome back to the Soul Grit podcast. This is Ann, and I'm here with my new friend, Maki, who is the president of a company called Clear Speech Specialists. She's an expert in speech and communication, working with accented professionals, and she's going to be talking to us today about some of the mental, emotional, relational impacts of being understood or not being understood if you have an accent or another speech difficulty. So, Anne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I'm excited to talk to you because if our listeners know that I've been talking to a lot of different specialists in different areas because all of these things impact our mental health as well as our relationships. And so when I saw that you were a specialist in this area and also that you're somebody that loves Jesus, I thought, let's talk and have this conversation because you might be able to shed some light on some things that we maybe haven't considered before, especially if you're somebody who doesn't have an accent. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this field?
My background is in speech language pathology. I have a master's degree in speech therapy, and I've worked with adults in nursing homes and hospitals and working on all kinds of communication problems. I've also been a director of rehab, and in the past, I was giving a tour to a new hire, a registered nurse who was from the Philippines. She was getting a tour of the department where I was working. And at the end of that, she asked me if I could help her with her accent. And I'd never worked with accent and I never gave much thought to it. And I understood her completely. So I was really not sure what she needed. But she told me that she was very self-conscious about her accent and that people didn't understand her at work. And so she'd repeat herself often or spell out the word. And when she spelled out the word, they couldn't understand the letters that she was saying. So it was just a double whammy. And so she asked me if I could help her. And I said, well, what's the main thing that's the problem? She said it was the letter H. So she kind of pronounced it like Esh. And so I said, well, can you say the word age? And she could. So I said, oh, sit down. I think we can fix this in like 5 minutes. So she did. And we did work on it very quickly. She made the correct pronunciation. And it was her reaction that really got to my heart because her eyes welled up with tears and her face turned pink. And she almost started to cry as she just said, I did. I said it right. And I said, you did. Say it louder. Be confident. This is awesome. And anyway, it was her reaction that made me realize that there may be a lot of people out there that are very self-conscious about speaking with their accent because they're not understood. So I studied up everywhere I could under experts. At that time, there were only about 3 around the whole country. When you had to fly in an airplane and go to their conference, I'm dating myself. Anyway, that was like 17 or 18 years ago. And I learned everything I could about teaching correct American English pronunciation and accent patterns. And that's how I got started. It was purely by chance. And I've loved it. I can bring a lot of love to people who are otherwise fearful about speaking because of their accent.
Yeah. So you're located in Kansas, correct?
Correct.
And so do you see mostly people in person around your area, or are you seeing people over Zoom or different platforms like that?
It's kind of meandered from the office, the brick and mortar office, to online since COVID. So I'm doing much more now on Zoom, and I would do in person if people are local, but at my home office or at a location of their choice. But I primarily do it through Zoom now.
Okay, that's good to know because listeners from the podcast will be all over the place. And so if they have this difficulty or know someone, then I want to make sure they know how to get a hold of you. And so we're
That's
going to
awesome.
share all of your links and your website and everything at the end of the episode. But before we get to that, talk a little bit about the emotional impact that you have seen the professionals that you work with. Well, like, what are they going through when they can't be understood?
Well, it's a whole new area for me, when I first learned about this, to understand how deep the emotions go for some people. And
Mhm.
you get a mixture. There are some people that it doesn't bother them that people don't understand them, and they just run right through the conversation and get
Mhm.
as much out and understood as possible.
Mhm.
And then others are a little bit more maybe timid or perfectionistic, or
Mhm.
they have a standard they hold themselves to
Mhm.
that is so high that they actually internalize this. And it can range from being frustrated to becoming fearful
Mhm.
about making mistakes. So they don't want to speak. They don't want to speak up, maybe on a group conference call, global, international company. Maybe there's contributions they should make. They've got it in their head, but they don't want to say it because they're so afraid they'll mispronounce. And then it will cause kind of a break in the communication flow. So they keep to themselves. They may become isolated. I have heard some people say they feel ashamed. Oh, that's a big word. I was like,
Mhm.
ashamed. Oh
Mhm.
my. Accents are 100% normal. And so no one should be feeling that badly and
Mhm.
ashamed of themselves. But they simply don't understand what they could do to polish their accent to be clearer.
Yeah.
And I want to interject that so many times people don't understand that when another person learns English in their home country,
Mhm.
it's very frequently taught, either elementary school or middle school and up. So they learn from a book the reading, the writing, and the listening comprehension,
Mhm.
but they're taught by someone in their home country who may speak with an accent, or it
Mhm.
may be a British English teacher. So they're kind of acquiring the British English accent. Nothing wrong with that.
Mhm.
But then what can happen is they come to America or they interact with native speakers of English,
Mhm.
and they realize it's a little bit panicky for them because they're like, "Oh, I don't even understand what
Mhm.
these people are saying,
Mhm.
our casual English,"
Yeah.
because they've not heard that. They've not practiced speaking
Yeah.
English. So wow, what a hardship it is when they get off the plane and they walk through the airport and they're like, "Ah, oh no. Oh no, I don't understand anything."
Uh-huh.
And they can't speak it clearly either,
Yeah.
some of them.
I'm so relating to this as a Spanish language learner because Spanish was my minor in college, and so I
Great.
can read it pretty proficiently, and I was writing research papers in Spanish and all of
Hmm.
that,
Yeah.
but I still have not become fluent. And I was thinking as you were talking, like my mouth, my brain just does not know how to roll R's. And to
Yeah,
sound like a native Spanish speaker, I would need to be able to do that, right? I'm
that's
always going
right.
to sound like I have an accent.
That's right.
And, and so I can understand um, like native English speakers speaking Spanish better than
Hmm.
I can I can understand Spanish speakers speaking
That's
Spanish,
right.
right? And so
Right.
I'm just thinking about just in order to like emotionally relate to what you're talking to, I'm thinking about how I feel when I visit a Spanish speaking country
Hmm.
and that nervousness that I feel like, will I understand? Will I be understood? Will I make a fool of
Yes,
myself? Can I just think of the most simple way to get this point across? And so
that's
it's
right.
not really doing justice to like the intelligence or the relational skills that I actually have
Hmm.
because that blockage is there.
That's exactly right. And it's a good point in the conversation to bring this up. So often, someone who comes to the United States, they are highly educated in their
Mhm.
area of expertise. They might be a physician, or they might be an engineer, or they might have pharmacy degree, or they're really highly educated, and
Mhm.
they come to the U.S. and they may not be able to find a job in their their expertise, their career, because of the limitations of the spoken English.
Mhm.
And that's a real challenge. But that's another. Their intellect is great. Their English is 100% perfect. Their grammar may be better than some of our high schoolers
Right.
stepping through graduation lines this May, but it's just the pronunciation. And the other factor there, when you say that you can't necessarily understand the native Spanish speaker compared to an accented English
Mhm.
speaker speaking
Mhm.
Spanish, there are other factors that are actually quite a maybe more impactful than the speech sounds, whether
Mhm.
you trill your R or not, but
Mhm.
it's the rhythm, it's the intonation, it's the
Right.
speed that they speak. And so we need to modify that as native speakers, as when we're talking to an accented speaker, they very often are not understanding us.
Mhm.
So it really is a two-way street, and
Yeah.
there's things we can do on both sides of that fence to communicate more
Mhm.
clearly, but it starts with awareness
Yeah.
that, we have to be intentional with our communication to
Yes.
make each other understand each other.
Yeah. And this is relevant to therapy because even as somebody that has like maybe like intermediate proficiency in a second language, I don't conduct therapy in that
Right.
language
Right.
because therapy is so deep. Like you have to get into those heart conversations.
Hmm.
And unless that is your native language or a language that you really spent the time to become fluent in, you're
Hmm.
not going to do justice to that situation of trying
Oh,
to help
sure.
the person through those things. And so it usually in my situation, it's better to refer a native Spanish speaker to a Spanish speaking therapist because I might understand them, but I'm not going to be able to take them to that level.
That's right. Yeah, I understand that completely. There's just too much. There are perfect words for the depth, the conversations that are deeper, and it just may not come to you as naturally to go that deep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I didn't mean to make this about my Spanish speaking journey,
Oh, no, no,
um,
it's relevant.
I'm trying to relate to this to just really feel what it would feel like to live in a country where I was asked to speak a language that everybody speaks, but that my ability to communicate in that language is not hitting the mark for some reason.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think in a lot of cases it creates maybe isolation
Mhm.
and And rightly or wrongly, I think some people interpret the frustration, it's just pure frustration between one speaker and another speaker that they're not understanding each other. There tends to be friction, a little tension. There could be anger, a call center, for
Oh yeah.
example. I can't imagine what some of those employees go through
Mhm.
because people don't understand them. They're asking to speak to someone else or someone who, quote unquote, speaks English, when
Mhm.
in fact that person probably is very fluent in their English.
Yeah.
So uh, that stress, though, that happens in that communication moment can be internalized, and some will feel this is kind of a big topic, actually. Some will feel because I believe they're kind of programmed in today's world to
Mhm.
jump to this assumption right away that they are being discriminated against based on their ethnicity or their language, first language, or whatever. The people I have spoken to, I honestly think that's not the main issue. We have prejudice, it happens everywhere, unfortunately, but I
Mhm.
feel like it's truly the pure prejudice or racism is minimal. It
Mhm.
is pure,
Yeah.
issue of humans are made to communicate. That's what we love doing. That's how we connect. That's how we share God, right?
Yeah.
Because we are in this energy and this communication flow that is so smooth and wonderful. And when there's if we're a train on the track and we're knocked off that train repeatedly as we're trying to have a conversational flow,
Mhm.
then we sort of throw in the towel and give up. It's like, oh, never mind, and that's our nature. But we don't have to react that way.
Mhm.
We can learn skills that will help us move through that and be a little more empathetic and compassionate and get to the real message behind all the struggle
Yeah.
if we put that as our intention.
Yeah. If you've listened to the Soul Grit podcast for even one episode, you know my guests and I believe that when we integrate the power of God with the wisdom of modern psychology, we get supercharged healing, change, and growth in counseling. As a Christian therapist, however, I realize that there are many practitioners out there who are personally Christians but don't know how to integrate their faith into their counseling practices. That's why I created the e-course, Faith Integration for Therapists. In this premium 5-module course, therapists who love Jesus will learn everything from understanding their calling, to marketing their practices to Christians, to adapting evidence-based interventions to honor our faith. You can learn more about the online course at www.soulgritresources.com/courses and send an email to info@soulgritresources.com to receive a discount code. Well, I'm thinking about even in personal experience or with clients that I've worked with, when you get the list from your insurance about like which providers you can see, and you see people with English last names or even Spanish last names in Southern California, like a lot of that's pretty well accepted. But if you see somebody with a last name that's from Pakistan or another country that, or like a lot of doctors, there's really good medical training in India, like you see a
China
name, you
also.
see a name like that, and you don't have confidence that that person's going to be able to understand and communicate with you about what your medical needs are.
That's right.
Or that you're going to be able to understand what their suggestions or treatments are.
Right.
And so you don't pick that person.
That's
And
right.
so there is a discrimination there just based on their ability to communicate with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine if, as a professional, you could be the most patient person. And if somebody's constantly saying, I don't understand you, I don't know what you're saying, what,
Uh-huh.
you would start to feel angry or frustrated or alone. And then that would come out in your relationships.
Exactly right.
There's no way not to
That's right.
act the way that you're feeling.
And unintentionally, I mean, it's simply human nature to want smooth flowing conversation. That's what we do. That's what makes us unique in the animal kingdom, right? We communicate. And so when there are those barriers, it just naturally brings about a frustration or a tension. And it's unfortunate because it does impact relationships socially, professionally. There are plenty of people that, because they're not well understood in their workplace, they kind of have some limitations on career advancement. And a lot of times, the people that seek my services are in that situation, and they know if I can just smooth this out, get past this, polish my accent, maybe I have an opportunity to advance and become a manager, a team leader, a vice president, something like that. And I have a side story if you want to hear
Yeah,
it.
I
I
was
don't know how
actually
our
just
time
gonna,
is.
I was gonna ask you, do you have any success stories here to share with us?
Yes, I do. I actually have many. I worked with some people in banking industry that were like tellers that were kind of put back in an office position because they couldn't really communicate well with the customers. They worked with me, and then they were moved up the line. Now they're one of the top loan officers, interacting great with customers. And so that's one side one. But a medical one, sometimes these situations when people don't communicate clearly are, like we say, very stressful, a lot of tension. They damage relationships to some extent or another. Sometimes they're an opportunity for a doctor to get some feedback and maybe seek services or make an effort to improve their pronunciation. There was one doctor that recently found me, just went through LinkedIn, I guess, and found me at Clear Speech Specialist, and he wanted to work with me one-on-one, and I was happy to do that. He told me kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, or the final straw was he's an internal medicine specialist, originally from Turkey, and works in New York. Those things he doesn't mind, I'm sure, if I share. But he was working with an elderly woman in his office doing an examination. She's a little hard of hearing, which that becomes another
Right.
complicating factor when there's a
Yes.
heavy accent. And she wasn't understanding some of the things he was saying, but he was telling her step by step what he'd do for his examination. And he told her that he needed to check her prostate. And she said, eyes got
I
huge. He
haven't
said,
got one.
yeah. She was like, you need to check my what? And he repeated, and she was like, I don't think so. And anyway, what it turned out he was trying to say was, I need to check your pulse rate,
Uh,
your heartbeat in your wrist, your pulse rate. And they ended up having a big laugh about it. He told me I could tell this story out there. But, he said, I think it's time.
yeah.
I just need to do some polishing of some of these things.
Mhm.
And we worked together, and he did great. I want to share on the side, he also shared with me that as far as how that makes you feel or the relationship issues or whatever, he's in a
Mhm.
medical practice that has multiple specialties. And every single one, he told me, in the office has been asked to do a presentation to
Mm.
the professionals.
Mhm.
However, he has not been asked to do a
Mm.
presentation. So you have to wonder, he's feeling a little self-conscious. He thinks it may be his accent. And
Mhm.
he's a wonderful person, just the biggest heart, great, great physician. And so, that self-consciousness that comes in, it doesn't have to be there.
Mhm. Yeah. So imagine with someone like that, if you wouldn't mind just taking us through a little bit of the process. So you're listening, you're trying to understand what particular sounds they're having difficulty with, or a combination of.
Mhm.
Yeah, can you take us through that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. What I usually do, I used to do a big formal test and I'd go through, they'd say, read this out loud, and I'd make my notes and all of that. But after 17 years of doing this, I can have a conversation with someone and pick out the most salient issues for their individual accent that need work, and then kind of develop a plan quickly from that. But very often I'm listening to consonant sounds and vowel sounds, of course, but very often the most dramatic challenge in their accent has to do with the speech rate, how
Mhm.
fast they speak, the rhythms that they're using, their word emphasis or not emphasizing a word.
Mhm.
We emphasize something called content words, which I can explain a little bit more if you want more information on that. But also their syllable stress, because listen carefully, if they put their emphasis
Mhm.
on the wrong syllable,
Mhm.
okay, our brain puts on the brakes and they go, oh, what?
Yeah.
Or record.
Mhm.
One's a noun, one's a verb. And so those things are also a key thing to pick out and work on. I believe the research says around 70 to 75% of what we understand when we listen to someone else who
Mhm.
has an accent. It's the rhythm and the cadence, the intonation, the voice inflection.
Mhm.
Those things carry about 70% of our meaning. So
Yes.
if that's off, and it's very commonly off in someone who is from India, any of the languages from India, Hindi or otherwise, they're not they're not off like bad, they're just not standard. So
Mhm.
that our we get also the same from China, from Vietnam, actually Vietnamese people. I love working with them, but their language, the first language, whatever someone speaks as their first language, it has its own rhythms and patterns and speech sounds, and that overlays the new patterns of speech sounds and rhythms and all that they've learned with English. So that mixture is what an accent is,
Yeah.
and it carries over. So Vietnamese, get this, it's so hard to believe, they don't have any consonants at the end of words
Mm.
ever. And we emphasize
Mhm.
consonants at the end of words because we use that to link into the next word.
Right.
So if they're missing, it gives a very choppy sound instead of the flow, the musical cadence and
Mhm.
flow of American English. So those things are what impact
Mhm.
their accent and make it difficult to understand.
Mhm.
So back to your question, I listen for the intonation components. I listen to the speech sounds and substitutions that they're making for consonants and for vowels.
Mhm.
And whereas in Spanish, it would not be a big deal at all if you don't trill your R's, right? They're still going to know the word that you said. But in English, oh my gosh, I have such empathy for the people that are not native speakers because they have to learn this. When you substitute a vowel or a consonant, we will hear a completely different word, often inappropriate to that context. So it throws us off just not following the message. It's like, what do you mean you have to put on your goat? Okay, it's not goat, the animal, it's coat,
Yeah.
right? Or when you say, where do you leave? They're not saying where do you exit. They're
Mm.
meaning where do you reside? Where do you
Yeah.
live? So leave, live,
Mm.
coat, goat, or other things. Of course, it gets really embarrassing for them. Unfortunately, there are words that are kind of like naughty words you don't mean to say. You want to
Yeah.
go to the beach, but you say "beh," So it's like I just can't, I'm going to go to the ocean. I'm just going to say I go to the ocean.
Yeah. You pick a different word
A
altogether,
strategy.
right?
Yeah, right. So anyway, so I'm busily, we just have a conversation and
Yeah.
I'm busily writing down the things I'm hearing. And then I prioritize the things that I think would make the biggest impact the
Mhm.
fastest.
Mhm.
And then they have sessions with me. And if that hasn't fixed everything and they choose to go beyond, then that's an option. Or they
Mm.
can jump in a group class too.
Mm. So you do groups as well.
I do. Yes. I've
Great.
just created an 8-week course that I really love. It's comprehensive on the most essential things for someone to learn to
Mhm.
polish their accent. And by the way, I don't try and eliminate the accent
Mhm.
because most people do want to keep their accent. They just want to be clear.
Mhm.
So I have that 8-week course and it involves pre-recorded lessons, but it also involves live practice,
Mm.
live question answer, and I'm throwing in a pronunciation AI app for daily
Oh, wow.
feedback. 10 minutes a day, they can do that to really keep lots of practice time
Mhm.
going without paying a lot of money to do that.
Mhm. Mhm. So tell us, what's the difference in the demeanor or the confidence or the emotional well-being that you're seeing with some of the people that have been successful with your program?
hmm I I get feedback all the time about how they are so happy that they feel like they are much more their true selves,
Mhm.
rather than recoiling and saying, I'm not going to even say anything. They're brave and they're able to speak out. They feel happier. Their social relationships are improving. They have much more confidence
Mm.
because now they have knowledge of what they were doing that wasn't working, what they can do to change it, and then practice and master it so that they're clear.
Mhm.
And I will say, one of the engineers I worked with in aerospace, I'm in Wichita, Kansas, so we're the air capital of the world.
Oh,
We have a
yeah.
lot of aerospace type aviation companies where they build and create airplanes.
Mhm.
And one of them was working in one of the big companies here. He worked with me because he had been put into a manager position, but he said, nobody respects me. Like I
Mhm.
say, I ask them to do something and sometimes they don't even do it or they sort of just blow me off or whatever. And I feel like it's my accent. Well,
Mm.
when we dug deeper, it wasn't really so much the speech sounds that he thought were the problem. It was again the intonation
Mhm.
because there's hidden meaning, hidden authority that comes
Mhm.
with the way that we move our voice to
Yeah.
make a statement. And he would say something like, I need you to give that to me by Monday at 8 o'clock.
Like it's an option?
Drifting. Yeah, like if you want to,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't clear. I need you to get this to me Monday by 8 o'clock.
Mhm.
That
You
just
come down.
carries,
Yeah.
yeah, it comes down and it says, I mean it. I'm serious. I'm the boss. And, it's a whole different message that is unspoken, but that carries through your voice.
Yeah.
So we worked on that. He stopped doing the upward endings on all, he did this constantly, Spanish speaker. He was constantly doing that in his speaking. And in just a matter of maybe a month, 2 months, he came back to say, oh, my gosh, I love this job I've got now. Everybody
Mm,
respects me. I'm telling them things. They're doing things where, even just socially, he's being invited out to go places and
mm,
participate in the gatherings that are outside of the work hours. So that made me feel great that he learned that, and it really made an impact in his life.
wow. So, can you tell us a little bit as a follower of Christ, like how does your faith inform the work that you're doing?
That's a good question. I feel like I'm sort of always immersed in God. Everything I do, it's like the first thought on my mind in the
Mhm,
morning. It's the last thought on my mind at night. And God is love, right? That's the main message here for everyone is God is love. I obviously work a lot with people of other faiths.
mhm,
I work with Christians. I work with Muslims. I work with Catholic faith. Work with all kinds, even Buddhist. So I I feel like truly there's such a mm, I hope this doesn't offend your audience at all, but I'm a real not fundamental in the way of fundamentalist Christian, but I am a basic believer in God, and I'm not so much judgmental or critical of or participating in religion, right? The man-made component of all the rules of what we're supposed to do in each religion and all.
mhm,
So I feel like God has directed me, given me some gifts and talents to connect deeply with people of
mhm,
all faiths all around the world and to hear their emotion and hear their pain and connect with that, feel it deeply,
mhm,
and have skill sets that will help me move them out of that and ease their path in this brief journey we're taking called life.
mhm,
I do believe we're spiritual beings and we are living a physical life for
mhm,
this brief period, and that God should always be our focus in everything we do with every person. So I pray for my clients before I meet with them, and if they share personal information that requires prayer, I'm happy to offer that with them.
mhm,
Not that we necessarily pray in a session. Some aren't comfortable with that, but I will take my time before bed and include them in prayer and do all that I can to show them God through my love and my kindness
mhm,
and my compassion and empathy it that he's given me. That's just
mhm.
that's how I operate. So I feel like I obviously am a Christian, and I would love everyone to be a Christian, but that's kind of a stair-step process for people to find that in their lives. And if they're open to it, I'm ready to share. If they're
Yeah,
not, I just model God's love.
yeah. To love them, to use your gifts, and to give them a positive encounter with a Christian person, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yep.
That's great. So to end our episode, you're prepared. I'm going to ask you, what are you doing for soul care?
hmm Yes. So for soul care, I do a lot of different things, but some of the most important things I do is I serve others. So I serve others and I serve animals. That's a lot of my soul healing time is
Mhm,
helping those in need, whether it's a person or an animal.
mhm,
I also spend a lot of time in nature walking and being grateful. I pray. I have my Bible time, of course, every morning, and gratitude is my focus. Just keeps me so happy knowing all those things that I've been blessed with that I don't deserve, but I have. So I'm so thankful to God. And one of the interesting things I do, someone shared with me, on YouTube, you can go and look up healing frequency music.
mhm,
It's just instrumental,
yeah,
but it's like 432 is a hertz level
yeah,
that is supposed to be very in tune with the earth and nature and God. And I listen to that before I go to bed, and it just makes me so relaxed. It
mhm,
puts my brain kind of in theta
mhm,
waves, which are the relaxed waves of the brain. And that just is so relaxing and healing. I just sleep like a baby
mhm.
when I listen to that. So those are
Good.
some of the things
That's
I
a
do.
good variety of different ways that you're caring for yourself. And I love
Yes.
when I ask this question because there's some answers that come out from a lot of of Christian people like, well, I got to read my Bible and pray, and that keeps me grounded. But then there's just such a variety of the way, based on your personality and your body and your experiences, that God has allowed you to figure out, like, what do you need to do to care for yourself? And
That's right.
being able to give out is one of the ways that he made you. And
Yes.
probably how he made all of us, but you're just really in tune with that, right?
Right. Well, the older I get, the more I am that way. I put aside a lot of the little things. I mean, you just don't sweat the little things, they say. And the big things are our hearts and our love and touching others, whether it's animals or it's people, in a deeper way to just ease their journey. We're not here very long. We might as well make it as easy as we can for those who we meet on our path, is my philosophy.
Yeah. And I know your clients really appreciate your gentleness as well. So
yeah, they've said so. They do appreciate that. They feel safe. I think that's another word that's kind of overused these days, but they do feel comfortable. They feel honored by my understanding of what they're going through and my empathy to be gentle. And my feedback is very gentle. I don't slap the ruler on the table or just how could you make such an error?
Yeah.
Nothing like that.
Well, real quick before we go, how can people find you? Do you want to mention your social media, your website, anything like that?
Sure, absolutely. Right now, I would say if an individual is accented and someone shares this podcast with someone and they are accented and they would like to kind of have some free things to help them along their path, I would send them to my website, which is www, of course, clearspeechspecialists, it's plural.com. And that has like a free accent training guide and 7 easy steps for someone to it's an audio file and a written printable PDF, but that would give them some real guidelines on some of the priorities, what to do. And if you follow that through, it also goes to another page that offers a 45-minute free consult with me called the American Accent Success Checkup. And we're just going to take a quick listen to your accent, and I can give you those priority tips on things I'd recommend that you work on. And if someone has more interest in classes, we can look at that too after that, but no pressure to do that. This is completely free. If it's a corporation, I would recommend maybe they connect with me on LinkedIn, someone in HR or whatever, and that's linkedin.com/in/AnnMaki, ANNEMAKI. And then they're also welcome to email me at ann@english-accent.com or my phone number, 316-680-8611. So I'd love to visit with someone if I can be of any help.
Well, I will include all of those links in the show notes, so make sure you check those out and pass this episode along to someone that you think may be helped by this.
Absolutely.
I really enjoy sharing these resources with everyone. So, Anne, for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure.
The Soul Grit podcast is a production of Soul Grit Resources. You can find more at soulgritresources.com or on the socials at Soul Grit Resources. You can email me at info@soulgritresources.com.